West Tigers faithful. You're listening to the dulcet tones of Mac. I'm joined as always by my good friend Reedy. How the bloody hell are you?
Mate, I'm excellent. I had a very refreshing Easter weekend, which was great. Ate plenty of chocolate. And I'm in my notice period for my current role. So life is always better. It's like that, what's that meme? Whereas like John Travolta a Saturday Night Fever and he's eating something that looks like a kebab as he struts around with a very popped out collar. That's how I'm feeling right now. How are you?
Yeah, good. I was about to say, I think we'll try to put some sort of audio celebratory, streamers and popping poppers and stuff sound after your announcement there. Um, Coming off another win. This is another Wincast. West Tigers have managed to win 2 in a row. So we are going for the streak-breaking 3 in a row this weekend up against Newcastle. We will get to that and a whole lot more in due time. But first, I want to talk about something that I think is starting to make Tigers fans feel a little bit strange, and that's this absolute 180 from the media about the West Tigers. Over the last week alone, we're seeing articles about Benji Marshall being a great coach from Paul Crawley. Is it Paul Crawley? Is that his name?
Yep.
And we've seen David Riccio and Brent Reed both making predictions that we're going to make the top 8. With these journos suddenly glazing us, is it because we're good, or are journos just trying to take advantage of the narrative for clip?
I think two things can be true. I feel as if they're probably looking at, and look, these journalists don't look at really complicated metrics, but nonetheless, there is some method to the madness. But look, the Tigers are a big club. They've always rated highly in regards to impression and engagement metrics, typically be around controversies because that's been the type of club that we have been for many years. But it seems to me like the tide is turning and you can see it with your own eyes. But of course, yes, they're definitely drumming it up. I would argue that there's a little bit too much. I'm thankful that it hasn't been too bad this week. The week prior was crazy. I'm thankful for that. When around when we played the Warriors, that was pretty big too. But thankfully, it's managed to quiet down a little bit. But yeah, I'd still say it's a little bit excessive. But at the same time, it's nice for it to be positive press. And all this chatter, it was Manly a couple of weeks ago. They obviously made short work of the Dolphins, and then now it's all St George, and it feels like very 2023 West Tigers with 2026 St George. I am thankful that it is positive press, but I wish that they just get off our backs a little bit. As Benji says, I think Benji's a bit of a fucking grouch sometimes, but at the moment we've done nothing. We've achieved nothing. So maybe just lay off until we make finals, you know?
Yeah, look, I'm coming at this from a slightly different perspective because I don't think that the NRL media are prone to positive Tigers articles. Really, I think that they're kind of just calling a spade here. I actually think that that they're mostly right. Um, that game on the weekend, for 83 minutes felt like one that we were just destined to lose. Like, it felt like a game that we were the better side for the entirety of the game, and it just felt like we were destined to lose. Since when do we get like a penalty in the 78th minute to square it up and then a penalty in Golden Point? Like, this whole thing is absolutely turning around from my perspective, and my message for Tigers fans is let it happen. Don't project your negativity into the world. Don't project your trauma. When you see these positive articles, don't fear the change. Embrace the change. It's a new dawn. It's a new day, and we are good. One of the things that has been in the media a lot this week, and there was conversation on NRL 360 and a lot of conversations online, is what are we going to do with Jock Madden? Because Jock Madden has had 2 fantastic games in a row. He brings something to the side that we don't generally possess, which is fantastic kicking and general shit from the 7 position. What's your position on this? Give me a spree in about 30 to 60 seconds, Jared.
First of all, wonderful segue. I thought that was really strong there from you, mate. It's got
Thank you.
his brains with aplomb. With Jock, I think that I've had a couple of conversations with a few different people, some heated, some not so heated. I'm an advocate for Jock Madden remaining at number 7. I think that, and we've spoke about it through the preseason, that this system that Marshall has crafted requires a halfback that is able to do the traditional on-ball things, playing nice and square, kicking well, leading the side around, direct and deep, and being selfless in a lot of ways, and being the pass before the pass, and setting up those guys around him. See, the tries that were scored by Kai Paul and the week prior, the lead up work before Adam Dewey made those breaks. Subtleties in Jock's game, I think, again, with how square he plays, but also at tempo and with some variation there, I'm really impressed with. It's not a finished article by any way, shape, or form. There was a couple of passes that went to ground. There was some kicks that he'd probably like to have over again. And realistically, I'd like to see him run the footy more. But for mine, he is the 7 moving forward based off what I've seen. That said, I know that they planned for Dewey all summer. I won't be surprised to see Benji revert to it. But looking at the sample size around, particularly the South Sydney game, and then also what AD's produced out of the back of shape, because of the work of Jock Madden, I'm salivating at the thought of Jerome Luai out the back there.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've still got 2 more games of Jock Madden before Luai's due back.
Well, Jerome's very keen. It was hilarious talking pre-match to Cooper Cronk. He said he'd be back next week, and then in the post-match press conference, Benji shot it down in flames. MCLs are interesting ones, mate, but I think that with the way that we're playing and our win-loss record, they'll probably err on the side of caution and have him back for Canberra. I'm not exactly sure. I'll be curious to see. And he's missed 1, 2, he'll have missed 3 this week. Yeah, I think Canberra looks about right.
Well, I think that Jock Madden probably will keep the jersey as long as the Tigers haven't lost a game by the time Luai comes back. Because I feel like that Benji has had a tendency this year so far to not tinker with the winning side. And I'm not suggesting that he's going to favour Madden over Luai. I don't think that that's going to happen in a million years because, if you consider, Jock Madden's contributions to the on-field performances in a world where we have just won 4 or 5 games straight or whatever, Jock Madden can only really play in one position in the starting 13. Dewey can play in several. So I feel like that it's very likely that we'll see Jock Madden retain that jersey, assuming that we continue to win. But if we don't, it makes the decision quite easy. But yeah, I like right now, if Jerome Luai was healthy this week, I'd be picking Jerome Luai and Jock Madden. I think Jock Madden shapes as like the perfect hubs for Jerome Luai in the way that he likes to play. And I think that he's also the perfect halves for Adam Dewey in the way he likes to play. I don't think that it's necessarily a hard decision at this point. I would be going with Jock, but yeah, we will soon see. In other news, we have finally launched West Tigers Discord, the West Tigers Faithful Discord. Sorry. So if you're keen to get in amongst the chatter, we've got, I think it was last I checked, about 76 members. We launched it yesterday. So the conversation's popping off in there. And if you'd like to join us, just go jump on our Facebook or our Twitter at West Tigers Faithful or Tigers Faithful, and you'll see the pinned posts there that'll allow you to join the Discord server. Or shoot us a message on any of the channels that you follow us on. So far, so good. You can interact with me and Jared in there, as well as a whole bunch of other degenerates and a whole bunch of other fans. And yeah, it's a good bunch already, and the conversations are popping off. Speaking of conversations popping off, I am definitely the master of the segue today. Conversations popping off today. I got a little frisky, Jared. I got a little frisky on Facebook. I got my back up. I got a little bit hoisted on my own petard when it came to Facebook. So I started posting some pretty interesting hot takes. Hot take 1 was just literally posing the question as to whether people would choose Lachlan Galvin over Jock Madden. I thought that was an interesting thought experiment, right? Because, Lachlan Galvin's currently being picked at 7 at the Bulldogs, who were, a more favoured team coming in to the NRL this season than us. Unsurprisingly, unilaterally laughed at a mere suggestion that the immortal Jock Madden would be not picked ahead of Lachlan Calvin. But perhaps more interestingly was the second of the two conversation topics. And we're going to have a quick chat about this, which is Aaron Woods the greatest West Tigers prop of all time? The GOAT of the West Tigers props. Now, in my view, I think it's pretty obvious. I think he is. But popping that out there the way that I did today rustled plenty of fans' jimmies. I got laughed at. I got insulted. I got called names. I got called dickhead. I got called a lot of things. And even about half an hour ago, ex-NRL firebrand Frank Paul Newasala came out swinging at Aaron Woods and called him the softest prop who's ever played the game. So, Jared, what are your thoughts? Like, I thought that this was a pretty...
Got to say, I agree with FPN. The drag queen with a handbrake. Just constantly into the defence, reverse, like he was playing fucking Parking Mania, back into the defence. Powder puff at a time where realistically the grind and the workhorse front rower was a premium at that time. The game was, I would argue, at its worst in regards to how structured it was, how typical the styles of play were, and so many copycat systems across the place. And obviously, I would argue that Aaron's prime was around the Jason Taylor years, and you only have to look at ladder position to determine how good, realistically, Aaron Woods was for us. Second last.
You're taking the piss.
And no.
You're taking the piss. Like, okay. Do I think Aaron Woods was overrated? A little bit. Do I think Aaron Woods probably got more like rep caps than he probably should have? A little bit. But what West Tigers prop's better than him?
Well, mate, somebody who didn't have a rep cap, it should have gotten one, from my perspective, was one John Skandalis, Campbelltown's own. Many people will remember at the end of the 2005 season that realistically the only player we had picked for the Kangaroos was Scott Prince after a premiership winning year, and it was an absolute atrocity. No Brett Hodgson, no Anthony LaFranchi, and no John Skandalis. This is a man that was there from day one in 2000, scored our first try. He is a player. He's a one-club player. They are a dime a dozen, or the opposite of a dime a dozen, rather.
Rare as hen's teeth.
They are amongst West Tigers, particularly around front rowers. He won a grand final. I think that his impact on the team that year, he was the glue. He was a leader. He bled for the jumper. It's as simple as that. He still works for the club to this day, and he's just a great bloke. Would you ever hear Frank Paul Newasala speak about the great John Skandalis in the way that he spoke about Aaron Woods? I don't think you would. I think that Skando's a prop that would hold up in any era, to be honest with you. He's tough as nails and dynamic and defensively sound. He's a guy that I back every single day of the week and twice on Sundays.
You think he was better than Woods?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Well, we heard some pretty interesting takes. I saw a few people throwing up names like Keith Galloway, which I think has some merit. Galloway was obviously very important in the 2010 and 2011 finals pushes. I saw a couple of people throw up Todd Payton, who I don't really think is as good as people seem to recall. There's a lot of bias. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I hear your rationale on Toddy? I'm curious.
Well, okay. So, we're talking about GOAT, West Tigers prop, right? Not one time was even the best prop in any West Tigers team that he was playing in. So I don't necessarily think that he even could possibly win the argument. Skandalis was better than him when he was playing next to Skando. Galloway was better than him when he was playing next to Galloway. Gibbs was better than him when he was playing next to Gibbs. Woods was better than him when he was playing next to Woods. Did he even play with Woods? I don't even know if he played with Woods. I think Payton's last year with us was 2010, right? So anyway, I don't think Payton was he was obviously skilled, but I don't even think he averaged over 100 meters per game for his entire career. He's not even remotely close to an argument. I think that the West Tigers fans are obviously jaded by the way Aaron Woods left the club. I think that's very obvious. I think that the West Tigers fans just look at the idea of like Aaron Woods being the greatest of anything representing the club and just immediately just go, that's disgusting. And I understand why. But the facts are the West Tigers have had a horrendous history of having quality middle forwards. We have not had any really good middle forwards. Every time we've tried to sign one, they've either become medically incapable of performing
Mm.
or just were washed up past the point of even being remotely passable. You know, I think Scandalis probably the only argument you can make, probably because unlike Woods, he was really quite underrated. I think John Scandalis was underrated throughout his career. He's probably the sort of player that if he played at a better club, he probably would have got rep honours, if I'm being honest. So yeah, look, Scando's not a bad shout, but I just really don't see how anyone could make any real logical arguments that a guy who won Daily M Prop of the Year, runner-up Daily M, played more than 10 tests, more than 10 origins, is anything other than the GOAT prop. Speaking of the GOAT conversations, we are going to continue this debate over the next little while on the podcast and online. We're going to put out the West Tigers Faithful Best Ever 13. I think we've settled our opinions right here on the props. I think that like I'm going with Woods, you're going with Scando. That seems like a pretty fair setup for the best props. Keith Galloway missing out. Thoughts?
I understand, given that you probably need that enforcer type and you need your workhorse type in regards to, Scando and Keith both were that sort of middle forward leader in certain eras of West Tigers. I think simply because of, what he's given for the club and what he's achieved, that Scando makes the most sense there. So happy to split that one down the middle with you, mate. And obviously, yeah, I understand, given Aaron's accolades and his time at the club, that realistically it makes sense.
Well, the other couple of names that popped up were Alex Twal and Terrell May. Terrell May came up quite a lot in the conversation. Uh,
Mm.
for me, him being only at the club for 1 year and now this year, not even performing. I think Twal's been outperforming him. I think Twal has a much better argument. But speaking of Twal and May, let's talk about the win against Parramatta. And let me throw it over to you. Let's discuss this heroic Easter Monday miracle victory.
Mate, a game where you're thankful to have witnessed a result in such an epic clash, but one for probably about 81 minutes that I wished I was a neutral. Realistically,
Yeah,
like if you're a Canberra fan or you're a Brisbane fan and you turn that on, it was just pure entertainment. And it had everything. There was the early scramble from Parramatta. There was the kickoff drop to the scrum drop to the scrum drop, like 10 minutes into the match. It was chaotic. There were moments that left you on the edge of your seat. There was the boil over in the second half. The last 10 minutes was as chaotic as I've ever seen. And then the last in conclusion. It was a phenomenal match and a match that realistically I look back on, and apart from that, from two 15-minute periods, right? So obviously the first 15 to start the match, and then around the sin binning, we were the better team. For 55, 60 minutes, we were far and away the better football side, and we dominated Golden Point. Like realistically, there is so much work to do on our field goal sets, and I'm not proud of it. But the way that our middle forwards roll up their sleeves in Golden Point, we're really, really changing our fortunes in a stanza of play that we are typically diabolical at. Mate, I guess for me, we look pretty lethargic coming out of the sheds, and obviously, Benji knows way better than what we do and said that he thought that the attitude and preparation from minute one was in the right place. But looking at the body language of the two teams, I wasn't surprised to see the Eels up and about. They cut off a few of our attacking rates to start off with, and obviously they went 10-0 up. Now, our yardage game came into its own, but to begin with, it wasn't great. But naturally, I think the biggest talking point in regards to, I'm going to say, work-ons or negatives was the lack of attacking execution, particularly in that first half when we had a lot of ball. We'll dive into that in a little bit, but probably best to get your overarching thoughts on the game before we start really getting into the weeds.
Yeah, I think it was like probably a good sign overall that we won that game because I think Parramatta came out very hungry. I think Parramatta probably played about as good as they could have, to be honest. Like they showed up and they had a lot of good intent. And they were sloppy in parts, but I think that the difference between the two sides, once again, which is starting to become the pattern, was in the forwards, in the meterage, especially. We ended up with over 400 meters more than them by the end of the game. Our completion rate was slightly better than theirs. We did have 54% of the ball. And the fact that we continue to do that, and now we're actually like we won this close game is, a very positive sign in my opinion, because I don't think that every team that we come up against every week this year is going to have that like Parramatta fired up Easter Monday at home sort of vibe where they did come out and they did kind of punch us in the mouth early. In the first few sets, they were definitely on top early. But as we predicted, we did sort of just strangle them. Like when we dragged them into the grind of the game, it was them that fell away. We pretty much, aside from losing Luke Lalali'i late in the game, we were pretty much on top of them for the entirety of the rest of the game. And then luck be have it. And this is, where West Tigers fans probably started to feel like the dreaded West Tigers curses were starting to come back in. Luke Lalali'i sin binned for something that's never been sin binned for ever before in the history of the NRL. Look, I understand where they're coming from in terms of trying to like make things a little bit more, about the result, about the outcome, whether the player gets injured or not. But talk to me about your perspective on that. Do you think that was the right decision to sin bin Luke Lalali'i, taking off your West Tigers bias?
We've got a really similar opinion on it. I believe that sin bins are utilised for professional fouls when a player impedes the play in the act of scoring a try, or if realistically what they have done is careless. I don't deem Luke's actions to be careless. It was realistically, he did wrap his arms around him and that impeded it. But as many have said already, if Bailey doesn't dislocate his ankle, and shout out to Bailey, I hope he's all right. That's a horrible injury to come back
Yeah.
from. But if Bailey gets up and walks back to his wing, then we're not having this conversation at all. And then we're talking about how much did the Tigers win by, as opposed to this topsy-turvy 85-minute match.
Yeah, I tend to
Yeah.
agree. I think we were probably going to run away with that game. It felt like we were probably one try away from scoring three at around that time. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was kind of like that was Parramatta's last. It felt like that was Parramatta's like last shot to get a try on the board, and the Tigers were probably about to go back down the other end and just start to run away with that game. So I tend to agree. Another interesting fact about the game: we actually won the game scoring fewer tries, which I can't remember the last time that happened for the West Tigers. Jock Madden, we got home on the back of Jock Madden kicking a perfect 5 from 5. Not all of them easy. Obviously one of those penalty goals from very far out and off to the side slightly. He kicked the goal from the sideline to convert the Tavan try. The Dewey try was kicked from out wide and on the wrong side for a right footer, mind you, in both of those cases. So, and I think even Bullis was the right side. So it was, yeah. So like, I think the only easy kick he had was the match winner. Every other kick was pretty challenging. So to kick 5 from 5, he's a very deserving man of the match. How did you see the performances of the West Tigers? Did anybody in particular stand out for you?
Yeah, there were a few. The one that there were a couple, and this match was won on a lot of effort plays. Because we didn't execute correctly in attack, for mine, it was the work of Api Coruscant on some of his efforts. There was a bat back about 8 minutes into the match where he just launches for the ball, with no thought for self-preservation. The tackle he makes on Jack Williams, the tackle that he makes on Mitchell Moses to get back there when he made that break. Obviously, Samuel Afainu's 2 catches, one off the dropout when it felt inevitable that they were going to score another try, and obviously off the short kickoff to get the ball back, and 2 plays later, his brother gains as a penalty. That was phenomenal. And then obviously just the workmanship of guys like Fanua Bole, who I think has been much maligned recently. I think his first contact was excellent. I thought he was brilliant in Golden Point. I think his yardage game is improving with every week. He's not playing as long minutes as he was this time last year, but he's standing up and I think he's doing his job, and I think he's only getting better with every week. Alex Twal again was great. But in terms of Man of the match performances. You spoke on Jock Madden. I'll speak on Kai Pearce-Paul. I thought he was phenomenal. And the first time that we play short to him and Madden does enough to make Pezzett and Brian Kelly hesitate, Kai does the rest and we score. He should have had another one when he was screaming through on a lead line and Jock didn't play the pass. But a few minutes later, he sets up that try for Jareen Buller. Just a phenomenal footballer and everything that we thought that he was. I'd love to pull up the receipt around the time that we signed him. It felt like he was a few too many kilos overweight at Newcastle, that they were, sort of had a bit of a Ferrari in the garage type situation. And the football he's playing is evidence of that. I thought he was phenomenal. I want to call out Royce Hunt. That's a big one for me. It is not a coincidence that the moment that Royce got on the field, we scored within minutes. He is phenomenal with ball in hand at the moment, and he is single-handedly changing momentum. His partner in crime, Sione Finu, I thought had a really, really solid game, but he wasn't as noticeable as he's been in previous weeks. He held down the fort and he was solid and he did his job, whereas Royce, he influenced that scoreboard. His ability to change games from the moment he gets on, it's not a coincidence that we score tries in bunches when Royce gets on the field. He is a living, breathing momentum machine.
Yeah, it was. I agree with you. I think that Sione and Hunt are both making themselves very solid points of difference off the bench. It's no surprise at this point, around about halfway through the first half, when those interchanges come on, that seems to be when we start to separate ourselves from the opposition. It'd be great if we could start games well, but I'm sure that will come. Want to highlight, I thought Jareen Buller's performance was much improved. I don't really think he did all that much wrong on the weekend. He seems like he's always just like one little step away from breaking a game wide open, comes down 1 meter before the try line, or one guy just manages to get a hand on him when he's through tackles. Like, he's just, maybe he needs to just add a bit of size or something about him so he can start to break tackles a little bit more.
There was there was 2 tries that went begging. One was the ball where he got around Brian Kelly and then threw it at Sania's bootlaces. If that hits Tito on the chest, I think that we open the scoring. Also, the one where he took the ball, he fed the scrum, he swept, and Luke just drops it on the first tackle. I think
Yeah.
that Jareem had done enough, and Simonson was on skates, that realistically, if Luke takes that, he probably scores there. So there was a couple there. And realistically, yeah, I think that, if he gets that execution right, not the Luke one, Luke just drops that. But if he doesn't throw it at Tito's bootlaces, we're sitting here going, oh, well, that's what we've asked for from his ball playing for a very long time.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at the stats of this game outside of that. I think that it's surprising that this scoreline ended up 22-20, because I don't think either side defended all that well in this game. We ended up making a lot fewer missed tackles than they did. But last week, where we didn't have a single forward who missed more than one tackle against the Warriors, this week we only had one forward who didn't miss one. And it was Royce Hunt, and he had 3 ineffective tackles, 15 tackles made. We got sort of carved up the middle. Terrell May was missing tackles. His tackle efficiency was down on its usual performance. Api Coruscant missed quite a lot, but he also made 56 tackles, which is, obviously all you can ask for from a dummy half that played 85 minutes pretty much. Bolle only missed the one. Sam Weller missed one and had 2 ineffective. Kai Pearce-Paul was pretty poor in defense, to be honest, but again, also made a lot of tackles. And even 12 missed a couple of tackles. So, while I think our Pack's defense was down, so it seems like Parramatta's attack also sputtered a bit. They didn't really take advantage of opportunities as well as they might have. But then you flip it around, and realistically, I think we left so many more opportunities begging than they did. Like, they had guys like Riley Smith, who made 37 tackles and missed 9 tackles. They had Paula and Williams both missed 3 tackles each. Tuolangi missed heaps of tackles. Kidione Kautonga missed tackles. Moretti missed tackles. Tuaviti missed tackles. So, like, you gotta, it's I guess, like, we should be okay, because if you really look at the structure of the West Tigers right now, our backline, like our attack, is nowhere close to what it would have been when we were training in the off season. So
Yep.
you're gonna have to expect a little bit of inefficiency when it comes to actually putting points on the board, because Jock Madden, even if he did train a bit in the offseason, he probably trained more with Luai than Dewey. Luai obviously would have been central to everything. Taylor May would have been central to everything. Would have had Marcy on the wing, where he's at this point in his career a lot more effective. Sunia Taruva on the right wing, whether that means, we would have had Star at right center for the most part, or Taylor May at right center, or whatever the case may be. But this current backline that we're running out is very unlikely to be one that trained together much at all in the offseason. We are missing some very important members of the side, and other important members of the side are playing out of position. So once once they get a little bit more feel for the game with this combination set, and obviously, assuming Taylor May and Jerome Luai come back into the side, it should be an improvement. I got to ask though,
It's
what
a good
would you what would you do if we clicked our fingers and we had a fully healthy roster? There's a lot of questions now, right? Because we've got Tino Tavana, who scored a brilliant try. We barely even talked about that. That was like, over the head catch, Tino style, freakish talent. Yeah, slamming it down. And we've got Tino Tavana, who's really stamping his claim on that right wing. We've got Sunia Taruva playing out of position. Marcy, who's kind of struggling a bit, I'm going to be honest, at left center. He's not really he's not like being overwhelmed, but he's not doing anything brilliant compared to what he looked like on the left wing in the preseason. You got to think that if he was on the left wing outside of like a Taylor May, that we would be getting way better returns on that left edge, right? What would you do? Would you look to bring Stafford Toll back in and push Sunia to the right? Like, talk to me about what you feel like our best mix in the backline is now.
It's a fascinating thing to think about, right? Because there's so many options now. Stafford Toa obviously was very underdone, and I'm not going to count that the reserve grade performance against him. But I think that people forget that at this time last year, he was the form right center in the competition. But for me personally, right now, purely based on opinion, I can't see him getting back into the side, even if he starts, ripping the hinges off. Sunia Taruva, I think, has done a phenomenal job at right centre. There is absolutely no doubt about that, but I do believe that you are taking away from his finishing ability and his attacking gifts playing him there at right centre. He is much better suited with somebody inside him that can do the lead-up work, and then he can finish off, and obviously his yardage game remains the same. For me, obviously, we have spoken about in regards to Jock, ideally I would have him as my starting 7 with Jerome on the left-hand side. I'd have Jerome at the back. I would move Marcy to the left sting, as you mentioned. I would have Sunia there, as I've just spoken about, on the right-hand side. Left centre for me is Taylor, that goes without saying, but right centre is where I believe Adam Doueihi should sit for the time being. And the reason being is that while I would prefer him to play 13, I'm not touching that forward pack right now. The rotation where it's at is very, very strong. If it ain't broke, don't fix it in regards to that. And I think that right edge has chopped and changed this year, but by keeping Adam on that right-hand side, you maintain that cohesion and that understanding that they possess, given that, he's just defending one wider, albeit on the same edge. He's got Tito and Kai there, no dramas, and Jock will just move to that right-hand side. That for me is the best way forward. Now, I see Adam long-term as the 13, although there's been some chat around Latu Fayuno actually saying that he's willing to play anywhere, including lock, and he's beginning to build his game as such, so that way he can remain at the Tigers, which I absolutely love. But I think that Adam is the better lock there, just simply because of what Latu possesses as a ball runner. While Adam is a strong ball runner, I actually think that he's better suited to the middle corridor, simply because he doesn't possess the acceleration and the ability to change tempo the way that Latu does. So for now, though, that's where I'd be playing Adam at right centre. So that'd be my 1 to 7. And again, I'm not touching that forward pack right now. It is our greatest strength, but I would like to try and see. It's hard, right? I'm just worried about Uppy at the moment, just in terms of how many minutes he's playing and whether or not he can keep this up, because some of the efforts he's pulling off are incredible. And I don't know if Tristan Hope's up to it. So before June 30, I'd probably be looking for a 9.
Manase Fainu.
Well, he's not going to get out on bail anytime soon. On
I,
parole.
I think he's actually I think it's actually scheduled for May.
I'm just in win now mode, bro. I just think realistically, God, honestly.
Bring back Jacob Little. I want to point out something that's interesting to me, and it's the breakdown of passing between Dewey and Madden. I've brought this up already a couple of times on the disco, but on the weekend, the amount of times that Jock Madden passed the ball as opposed to Adam Dewey passing the ball was quite remarkable considering Dewey's playing 7 and Jock Madden's playing 6. Jock Madden passed the ball 57 times in the game. Adam Dewey only passed the ball 16 times in the
Mm.
entirety of the game, right? The week before, Jock Madden against the Warriors, Jock Madden passed the ball. Let me bring this up. Jock Madden passed the ball 43 times. Adam Dewey passed it 18 times. So between the two of them, what you're seeing there is that Adam Dewey is choosing to run almost like 2/3 of the time that he actually receives the ball. That means that he is basically being treated like a line running option. And you saw that when he scored the try off of Kai Pierce Paul, right? Like he's actually hitting holes. Like he's actually, and in the Warriors game, he was doing it quite wide of the ruck.
Mm.
So I wanted to highlight that because I don't necessarily think that moving Dewey to right center is going to do anything negative to the West Tigers attack whatsoever. If anything, I think it's where he's sort of naturally gravitating to anyway. All of his line breaks have been on the right. He's kind of playing a weird right-sided running second fullback kind of style of play at the moment. He's definitely not playing halfback like any halfback I have ever seen before. What are your thoughts on that? And also, just aside from that, like, do you feel like there's any way that we'll potentially be losing anything from having him there in right center defensively? Because I saw a couple of people talking about potentially having too much fragility in defense from having Luai and Madden.
That's an interesting call. I've got to give Jockey's flowers. I think he's really improved defensively. I'm not gonna talk about those two sin binning tries. You know, we spoke about in the lead up. You know, Parramatta swinging from left to right, and realistically, they did it for their first try when we had the man for man. So realistically, Jock had done his job. They numbered up correctly. Luke Lally tried to double team Sean Russell. Sean Russell, it didn't come off, and then obviously those two tries that young Twiddle scored. Realistically, they were just making use of an additional man as good attacking teams will do. I believe that ultimately Adam is not a guy that's going to put a shot on. He's not a Jarrell Skelton. But realistically, I think that he's going to do his job. I think that Sania Taruva is quite a passive defender. We've seen what he's done at right centre, and he hasn't put a foot wrong. I think that if this was Adam Dewey 3 or 4 years ago, yeah, I'd be definitely concerned. You'd say, okay, there's some chinks in the armour, but I think that he'll be okay. Jerome Luai, I was pretty disappointed with his 2 efforts on Jai Gray against South Sydney. That does live in the memory, but I'm not necessarily worried about that. You know, this is a guy that's played at the highest level and has not been, you know, directly responsible for too many tries in big moments. I think that, you know, as the season goes on, he will only improve in that regard. And then on the other side of the ball, AD, particularly in 2020 after he started the year at fullback, but then moved to the centres and Moe Embi came back as the 1. You did see Adam sort of move around a little bit. If we're worried about Jerome Buller's ball playing ability, then utilise Adam as that third layer. You know, if it goes from Madden to Luai to Dewey and we're playing, you know, 3 sort of, or, you know, with 3 leads and then, you know, different blokes sweeping out the back. I think Adam can do that and create an extra man and utilise his running threat in that manner. And also, as an outside back, I think his yardage game is criminally underrated. I think he's brilliant from that perspective. So I'm choosing to see the positives. I'm hopeful that the Benji sees it in a similar light. But look, if he keeps picking AD at 7 and we keep winning games, I don't mind. I just don't know how he's going to go in regards to adjusting back into that organising, methodical, organisational 7 style after all this.
Well, I was just while you were talking, I was just trying to bring up the pass to run ratio stats of the 2 previous games to see if there was a significant difference in the way Dewey's playing with Madden versus with Luai. And
Mm.
I have to say there is. In round 1, his pass to run ratio was 2.67, which is on the high side. He had 38 receipts for 24 passes. So that's almost exactly 2/3. It is exactly 2/3. So he passed 2/3 of the time in a game that we won. Luai had 30 passes, 43 receipts. So Luai's pass to run ratio was actually lower. In the Rabbitohs game, Adam Doueihi had a even lower pass to run ratio. He had 31 passes from 55 receipts. So he actually passed a lot more in the Rabbitohs game than he did in any of the other 3 games. In fact, that was the only game in which Adam Doueihi passed more than his other halves partner, and we lost. So every game that we've played where Adam ran more and the halves partner passed more, we've won. So that could be a clue as to why we're doing what we're doing, why things are actually going the way they are. And it does beg the question, I suppose, like, maybe Benji Marshall's just actually like found a hack. Having a half that's, more of a run threat, the hybrid 7, may actually be what's winning us games as opposed to having 2 traditional ball distributors, especially right now when we don't have our strike in Taylor May available and also other players have been out with injury. But enough about that game. Let's move on and start talking about next week. Let's talk about the Newcastle game. 4 clash between the perennial powerhouses, the West Tigers and the Newcastle Knights, live at 4:05 p.m. from Campbelltown Sports Ground. I believe you'll be there.
I am going, yes. Yeah, I'll be there. So to anyone listening, if you see me, I think I'm in GA. I've got to ask the old man, but yeah, looking forward to it. Come and say hi if you see me.
And how do you see this one panning out?
I have no idea. Genuinely, this is a fascinating game for mine. Mainly because of you can see the strengths of both teams and you can see the clear weak points, but the weak points, are sort of cancelled out by the strong points of the other team. So it's going to be really fascinating. I've thought for a little while that Newcastle were due for a loss and they just keep winning. And we haven't won 3 in a row in 8 years. So you could argue that both teams are due a loss. So that's going to be fascinating. Newcastle, I've always rated Justin Holbrook, but this is fascinating. To have 2 players and ultimately $2.5 million on the sideline, plus Bradman Best actually, so let's say over $3 million worth of talent on the sideline, and to still be performing the way they are, it's a credit to him and the belief that he's instilled in these guys. It is just phenomenal. I think that Fletcher Hunt is high effort, high octane. And it has meant that while they've had to change their game style because Kalen was doing a lot of dictating play from first receiver, that it's working for them. Fletcher Sharp, for mine, is one of the greatest players to watch in this in the league. I love him, and what Jacob Saifidi is doing up front is just crazy, as is Dylan Lucas. And Matt Croker, I think he's been really good as well. But in saying that, we have our strengths, and while we have work-ons on. I'm excited. So key things that I want to call out. So the Rugby League eye test, a great man. He's published an article this week in terms of some metrics and some key things that, teams need to work on. And he's pulled out that Newcastle are the best in the league for defending these long sequences of play. So when you're faced with 8 or 9 tackles and a couple of repeat sets, the longer they go, the better they get. That realistically, they're fit and they're able to continue to scramble on their line and weather these storms. Funnily enough, that's where we're at. We're worse. We are the worst at converting those attacking sequences of play. So there is going to be a need to, play, I think, patiently to some point, but at the same time, we're going to have to take our chances. I look at Parramatta. I don't know if Newcastle, if we give them a 10-point head start, I don't know if we're going to be able to run them down. I just look at the form that they're in and the effort that they're playing with. And realistically, there were a lot of chinks in Parramatta's armour yesterday on Monday caused by us. But realistically, it's something to be mindful of. On the confidence side, we are well ahead of them on run meters. We miss less tackles than them, although that can be a bit of a unicorn stat. And we made plenty more line breaks. It's just converting and attacking execution. I'm not worried about our defense. This is another week, as you say, with these combos to build, not only in attack but in defense. I'm not super worried about it from that perspective. We just got to be mindful of Hunt down the middle, and then that right edge of Sandon, Dane Gagai, who's playing out of his skin for a 35-year-old, and obviously Dominic Young. But there are chinks in their armour. Jermaine McEwen falls off tackles all the time. Trey Mooney, has looked. There are times when he falls away defensively himself. Young DeCourcy on debut, we love him here, but there's chinks in the armour in some different places. So look, I think the biggest thing for us is our hoodoo. As I said, we haven't won 3 in a row for 8 years, and we haven't won at Campbelltown since 24. So, those
We didn't win there once last year.
no, didn't win once.
Jeez. Well, look, the one thing that we probably do have in our favor is the most recent form line. We beat them last time we played, so we've got that. I do tend to agree with you. This is a hard one to actually tip with any kind of confidence because, frankly, I would tip against both of these sides if I was a neutral supporter because it feels like both sides are like due a loss. You know what I mean? Like it feels like Newcastle are redlining. It feels like the Tigers coming off that Easter Monday performance, are potentially redlining, especially when ostensibly they're coming up against a top four side. I kind of want to tip both sides to get flogged, to be honest. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But obviously there must be a winner here. If I can't split them, then I'm gonna favor the Tigers. Look, I think that it should be a close game, but again, I can't even say that with much certainty because I could totally see either side flogging the other. Like I could see the Knights just having a miserable day out at the office. We put a big score on the Warriors in New Zealand, and I kind of see the Knights and the Warriors as a fairly similar, to be honest, in a lot of ways.
And worth mentioning that the Warriors put the Knights on the Gronk in their own home
Mm.
backyard on a day where Tanner Boyd looked like Andrew Johns himself.
Right.
On Andrew Johns' Hello Turf. Looking at their form lines, and again, take nothing away from Newcastle. They're playing brilliantly at the moment, but they played a very out of sorts North Queensland side in Vegas. They then went to Manly and trounced the Sea Eagles in a game where Seabold clearly lost the dressing room. They got dunked on by the Warriors, as I mentioned. They played a very, very out of sorts Canterbury Bulldogs side that has lost its identity. And then the Canberra Raiders, which I tip Canberra, but it's very, very clear that they are very much missing Jamal Fogarty, and with Ethan Strange moved to the other side of the field, it's just not the same. So I think they're a little bit harder to read than us, to be honest. I think we are a better team. It's just, again, it's my conditioning as a Tigers fan that I
Yeah.
sit and go, the various hoodoos. But the more I think about it, the more I'm talking myself into a Tigers win, providing again that our attacking execution improves. And I'm confident that with another week, and given it was something that Benji went out of his way to mention post-match, I'm confident that we'll fix it.
Yeah. If there's one thing that I feel relatively confident about is that it's going to be a very poor quality game.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I feel like that's been the pattern for Newcastle versus Tigers games of late. Like, I remember last year when we beat them, it was like the all-time worst performance I've ever seen the Tigers put in when we won. It was like absolutely diabolical, and Newcastle put in the worst performance of any side last year to lose that game. And Look, I think that you have to favor the Tigers. I think that the sports bet odds here have us a $1.66, the Knights 2.23. I think that we're unders. To be honest, I think it's much
Yeah.
closer than that. I think they're probably giving us a home ground advantage that does not really exist. I just underestimated how much the Easter Monday thing would do to Parramatta's mentality. I think that was the main difference. I think if that game was like Parramatta against any other side at any other random ground around the place, it probably would have been easier to pick. But just against the Tigers, Easter Monday, they grew a massive leg. I don't think Newcastle are going to grow the same leg, right? I think, if anything, they're probably going to have a setback off of a good win against Canberra. They probably pushed quite hard to get that result out of that game because Canberra might be out of form, but they're still Canberra. Like Newcastle would have, and they did play quite well. A lot went right for them. But yeah, look, I think the Tigers win this game. I'm also pretty confident that it's probably going to be 22-20 again, to be honest. That seems like a reasonable scoreline.
I love your call of it being a low quality match. I reckon it's going to get 4:45 on Sunday Arvo, and we are going to go, what the fuck is this? Match of the round, are you kidding? Both teams completely low, bombing tries, knocking balls on left, right, centre off kick returns. There'll be a couple of absolute defensive howlers. I would not be surprised to see that at all. But the more I see this, mate, the more I do see a Tigers win. It feels like the more I look at it, that realistically we can get this done. Obviously, they are not without their danger men. Let's not be silly. Dominic Young and Dane Gagai, as I mentioned earlier, are killing it. Sandon Smith is doing exactly what they need him to do at the moment. Fletcher Sharp is playing injured, but again, he's very dangerous. So Feedy, Lucas, these sorts of guys. But I'm confident of our ability to mitigate them. One that I do want to call out as well is young Harrison Graham. He's very dynamic off the pine for them, and somebody that, we're going to have to be weary of, particularly around a tired ruck. And I'll be curious to see how and when Holbrook injects him. I thought that the late in the piece last week, I thought that our halves steered us around reasonably well, aside from the field goal sets, and the way that we utilised Sania Taruva late with some inside balls and turning him back inside and using him, with an array of shapes was sensational work. That was brilliant. But at the same time, I thought that our middles looked really, really tight. So, have a bloke like Graham and his skill set is something that we're going to have to look out for. But in saying that, mate, I think it'd be remiss of me not to tip a win. And being a Southwest brother myself, I'll be very disappointed if they don't get it done for what feels like the fifth or sixth consecutive match at Campbelltown. So I'll tip a win with you. I think it'll be tight there for about 55, 60 minutes, and then I think I'd like to see us run away with it. I'm going to say similar to the Warriors game. I'm going to say 32-16 to the Tigers.
Oh wow, okay, that's cool. It's just crazy to me that the winner of this game is going to be entrenched in the top 4 on a 3-game winning streak. Like that it doesn't matter who wins this game. And that to me is why I feel like both these sides are just going to play like abysmally, because neither of these sides neither of these sides should be winning 3 games in a row at the start of the season. Themselves in the top 4. They neither of these teams are going to know what the hell to do with what's going on around them. They're just in uncharted territory. I'm very glad that we're playing Newcastle. I would prefer it not to be at Campbelltown, to be honest. If anything, I would prefer to be playing them in Newcastle, because I almost feel like it would put more pressure on them as the home team, and we would be going up there probably not as favourites, to be honest, and it'd probably play into our favour. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. And now, look, hopefully we're just wrong. And, hopefully Benji just has them primed and they just come out and they're clinical and they just carve them up. Yeah, I don't share your optimism about us putting the wood through them. I think that, to be honest, like I look at Greg Marzio and I see 3 tries. To be honest, he's just gonna, at the same time, I also see Greg Marzio and see 3 tries conceded. You know what I mean? It's I think Greg Marzio is just gonna walk all over Tino out on that sting, but at the same time, Jock Madden's gonna put the ball on top of Marzio's head and give Tino multiple opportunities to catch that thing. That to me shapes as probably the most interesting individual contest, probably without anyone even being remotely close. Maybe Kai Pearce-Paul versus the entire Newcastle side. We didn't mention that because that this is his coming home game, and look. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully this time next week we're talking about the hoodoo being broken and the West Tigers winning 3 in a row and firmly entrenched in a second, and hopefully on our own. Hopefully all of the other sides that are equal second to lose. Let's talk about pathways. Jared, what you got for me?
Let's talk positives initially. So Lisa Fiaola and Tasha Gale have both scraped into the finals, which is awesome news. So results went the way of the Fiaola girls, despite the fact that they lost to Central Coast Roosters. They were able to hold on to 8th spot, and in Tasha Gale, they also went down to the first place Sydney Roosters Indigenous Academy, but once again held on. So the girls will be playing this weekend, which is unreal, and hopefully, if they progress through, a little bit more in-depth analysis for you as well. As many people will know regarding SG Ball and Harold Matthews, West Magpies had a bye to round out the season, meaning that they finished in the lofty position of 10th in the SG Ball Cup, which is disappointing given that they were just 2 points out of the 8, and the team that was there was the Canterbury Bulldogs, who they were ahead with 2 minutes left in the match, and Harold Matthews finished in a very, very high position of 12. Tigers, unfortunately, we were hoping that results would go their way and they would land in the finals for Harold Matthews. That did not happen. They went down 52-zip to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Very disappointing. But the boys, there was a month there towards the back end of the season that they can definitely hang their hat on. Guys like James Kerr and Tommy Arroyana, absolutely players to watch. And in SG Ball, I think that Christian Azzi, for mine, was the best halves player that we have currently around that 19-year-old age group. So commiserations to all of those guys, but the games will go on. Jersey Flegg, unfortunately, we were looking forward to a great game between two Jersey Flegg Titans, it would seem, but not to be. Parramatta beat us 30-4, unfortunately. A sin bin to Christian Torpau-Moores in the 46th minute, and in that they scored 2 tries and put it beyond doubt. Our first try came 5 out from halftime. Xavier Tauai Fainga scored, but obviously way too late. I thought Logan Deninja had some good moments and looked dangerous.
His name's Logan Brooks.
Logan Brooks, my apologies. But these boys will be ruining this one. Pretty disappointing. I thought that Ethan Roberts had a solid return from injury, did some good things, but realistically, in a game where you lose by 30 points, there's not a stack of positives. Realistically, where there were positives, Mac, was in State Cup with our boys finally getting a win in the televised fixture on Easter Monday as the curtain raiser to the first grade match and by extension the first grade win. Craziest play I have seen in a very, very long time. Former Camden Rams first grader Fiahiva Siale Faye. Never seen anything like it. And it's not like this bloke was moving quick. He just went up one end. It was like watching Scooby-Doo when they're in a cave and they're trying to escape a villain. He just went one way, got blocked, went back the other way, got blocked, and then managed to get out of there. That was insane. But the chocolates, I think, mainly go to Patrick Herbert, who I thought was brilliant. For all of the things that we've mentioned around Patrick, in pre-season, particularly around trials, he is improving with every game. I thought in the trip to NZ where we were unlucky to lose, albeit in a match where it felt inevitable that we would lose, I thought he was our best player, but was quite solid. This was the week where he exploded. The try that the Solomon Salkuru scored in the 28th minute was executed by beautiful lead-up work from Herbert, and the presence of mind to kick that ball and the weighting that he put on it speaks to his class. It looks like that realistically a couple of years on the excavator hasn't hurt him too much. And for a guy that had a checkered injury history, towards the end of the first chapter of his rugby league career, it looks like it's done him a world of good. So good on Patrick, and he certainly outplayed a guy in Stafford Tower who a lot of people had some interest in. I was very, very impressed there. Javon Andrews with a textbook touch football step to score.
How good was that? Benji Boots.
In division effort, I thought that was sensational. But one that I'm really impressed with, Jack Haddard. He has an ability to just be around the ball. He never gives up on the play, and his support play is second to none. And genuinely, in a lot of ways, I think Jareen could learn off him in that department. I thought he had some beautiful moments with ball in hand, both running and passing the football, the latter of which is not always regarded as a strong point for him. But for a young bloke and for a very skinny young bloke, he's more than happy to throw his body around to try and save tries. And that was, in a lot of ways, a really pleasing aspect. I thought that the forward pack was pretty solid for the most part. I don't know if young Mitchell Tautua actually follows the pod or listens to it, but he liked my comment the other day when I said thank you for flying with Air Tino on the Tigers Instagram post of Falatino scoring that try. So shout out Mitchell. I thought Tony Suker again, brilliant. I'm really, really impressed with him, and he's coming to the point where I actually think that he's a high priority to retain.
Sakura?
No, Tony Suker.
Oh, Suka, I agree. Suka was huge.
Don't count out Solo Sakura. I was disappointed that he'd gone back to the wing, but now that his conditioning has improved significantly, he looks excellent out there and is a guy that Witcherell's skeleton off contract. And, I wouldn't be surprised if, people begin to sniff around him because he's too good to continue to play on the extended bench or in reserve grade. He's a guy that, we could potentially promote internally.
Vorp.
Yeah, there were a lot of positives, and it was good to see the boys get a win. And Hopefully, it can continue. Newcastle are typically strong in cup. I don't know where. Oh, they're sitting top of the ladder. So a huge test for these boys this week. But a win will put them in great stead, and hopefully they back it up this week.
Yeah. On Sakura, I think that he's got an opportunity because of the fact that Jarrell Skelton's off contract, right? Like, so I think that the West Tigers could extend Sol if Sol pushes and, states his claim enough to do so, because he pretty much would be a easy swap for Jarrell, probably on lesser coin. Like I could see the Tigers preferring that if they can gain trust that Sakura can do the job that Skelton is doing in first grade. So I can see that may be why he's playing on the wing right now, because they may be trying to give him the best chance to actually like win a roster spot. If he was in the back row this year, I don't know how optimistic I'll be about his chances of receiving an extension next year.
I agree completely.
But look, on Herbert, I just want to shout out some of these stats because it was like I remember watching Patrick Herbert really early on in his career and thinking to myself, like, this dude breaks tackles for fun. Like that was sort of his thing. Like he'd put hits on and he'd break tackles for fun. Dicks for fingers, but he could break a tackle and he could put a hit on. On the weekend, he had 14 tackle breaks.
Wow.
That's a lot of tackle breaks. He had 19 carries for 197 meters, a line break assist, 2 try assists, 14 tackle breaks, 67 post contact meters. That's a really good return. On the flip side, Stafford Toa had 8 runs for 55 meters, 1 tackle break. So right now, Patrick Herbert has to be a mile ahead of Stafford Toa. Now, obviously, that can flip on a dime. It might have had a lot to do with just the way the game flowed. Maybe Javon Andrews is only able to pass one way or something, and Stafford Toa just didn't get any opportunities. But that's a pretty massive difference. I said before when you were talking about Sakura, I said the word VORP when we're talking about Sakura. The reason I want to bring that up is for those who aren't every week listeners of the podcast, it stands for value over replacement player. If you compare Sol Sakura's return to the unheralded Fiohiva Siale Fainga,
What a name.
what a name. But like, if you can pick up that guy, and we do this every year. Like last year, it was Isaac, whatever his name is, forget his name, Thompson, and we also picked up several other random players off the scrap
Chris
heap.
Naps, Mapapalangi.
Chris Mapapalangi. Why do we always pick players that have crazy names? Anyway, I don't know whether we need to be persevering with Sakura, right? When you can just literally just get somebody who returns better performances than Sakura out of Ron Massey Cup. Like it's so in that regard, I think he does have a lot to do to stake his claim for a top 30 jersey next year, especially because we still have not extended Tino Tavana, and there are other players who are unsigned, such as the aforementioned Logan Brooks as well, who are performing quite well and play in a more premium position. But yeah, Tony Sukkar, 16 carries for 167 meters, 5 tackle breaks. That was his best performance in New South Wales Cup.
Brilliant.
He is also now pretty clearly in terms of his physical presence and his mentality. He's gone to another level when it comes to his body language and his command and his presence on the field. So very impressed with Tony Sukkar. I thought Mab Guy had a good game too. But yeah, and I agree with you. I thought Jack Haddard was good. I think Jack Haddard needs to hit the gym. I think if Jack Haddard can, get some more lean muscle on his frame, maybe one more really good off season of hard work in the gym, he might be something really quite special. He has a lot of talent you cannot teach.
I couldn't agree more, mate. Another one that I want to call out, Bailey Hodges. I've always believed that he was a 13, but he is doing time at the moment at 9 and sort of interchanging with Assessi. 6 runs for 62 metres, 26 tackles made, not one missed. I think that's top draw. I thought Luke Jack had a poor game. There were a couple of drop balls there that I thought, oh, come on, mate. But at the same time, I'm still very sold on Luke. I think there's a lot to like there, and I think there's a player that Similar to a guy like Andrew Davey, who debuted quite late and had a lot of mongrel about him and knew exactly what he needed to do. I'm still backing Luke to be that guy. I don't know if a debut comes this year, but there's a player there.
One thing that Luke Jack does have going for him is from behind, he looks like Liam Martin. He pretty much
Mm,
just is Liam Martin. Like,
mm.
he even plays like Liam Martin. Like, he, he literally must just, like, religiously study Liam Martin. If I was Liam Martin, I'd be really worried that he's trying to, like, become me and steal my identity. 'Cause he has the same hair. Luke Jack, it's getting weird. And on that
Mm.
note, I think we're done. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, but the great Nick Campton, really quickly, has written an article about the Tigers, and I just want to read the first line because I think it'll roll you up. The West Tigers themselves might not be talking about it, but every sicko you know of a black, white, and gold persuasion certainly is. Sunday's match against Newcastle is not just the latest game in an unexpectedly strong start of the season, you see. It's the chance for the joint venture to get the monkey off its back that's been there for so long, it's become a gorilla. I love it. And that sets the tone for the weekend.
It sure does. I mean, that's what Benji Marshall has to be drumming into them, hey? Like, it's a streak breaker. Establish Campbelltown as a fortress. Entrench yourself in the top two. This is a really important game. It is a really important game because if we're serious, we win. If we lose, I don't know. This has been West Tigers Faithful. I believe it's episode 59, 60. Anyway, you'll find out. You'll be able to see it in the subline. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, where Jared does all his best work. And if you want to join us on Discord, hit us up or go jump on the Facebook or X where you'll see the pinned comments. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Jared. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
We're only strangers.